Yo, Dream Team, it's your boy Neal, back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with the Brexit effect, how leaving the EU hit the UK part 2. Before we dive in, I need y'all to subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. You guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Here we go!
Compensate, but it certainly caused some disruption in the short term.
And the idea that the government was putting forward last year, that this was all part of the plan to develop a high-skilled, high-wage economy, was problematic at the time and is problematic today.
So the end of free movement means that the economy is reshaped. For some industries like hospitality and construction or soft fruit growing, that creates a painful period of adjustment because those industries were predicated on the idea that there would be free movement. But ultimately, that's a political choice. We don't have to have a soft fruit industry. We had one as a result of free movement. We now have to decide if we want one going forward.
Northern Ireland conundrum.
The long-running row over Northern Ireland, creating a border in the Irish Sea to avoid the north-south border returning on the island of Ireland, has poisoned EU-UK relations.
The EU is using us as a negotiating chip and saying that Britain can't join the Horizon Science Research Project, which is worth 95 billion euros, hugely important to British scientists and British universities.
But it's blocked because the British government is trying unilaterally to rip up its obligations in Northern Ireland.
While we have that attitude still in place, I think it's very difficult to see our trading relationships improve.
The discussion about Northern Ireland and its future trading relationship was one of the things that bedeviled the negotiations about Brexit. Everybody knew it was going to be a problem, but we did the deal anyway. We voted for Brexit. We signed a so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, which Boris Johnson and Lord David Frost, the former Brexit minister who negotiated the Northern Ireland Protocol, spent the last several years trashing. I seem to think it's become some surprise that the European Court of Justice applies EU rules to Northern Ireland when they have agreed that Northern Ireland should remain as part of the EU single market for goods. One thing I'd say about the Northern Ireland Protocol is it's given Northern Ireland an incredible trading position in Europe. It's the only place in the whole of Europe which has one foot in the UK single market and another foot in the European Union single market. It's an unwelcome fact for Brexit.
Dang, so Brexit was the best thing they hit in Northern Ireland. Know what I'm saying? They said, oh, this is perfect.
Brexit is that Northern Ireland has become an economic success story, booming certainly in terms of inward investment. One of the reasons it's doing well is because it has a place in the European single market for goods. It's exactly the same trading position with the European Union that the whole of the UK had until a couple of years ago. There is a political conspiracy of silence around Brexit and the effects of Brexit. It spans the government, it spans the Labour Party in particular.
It's very hard to separate out the effects of COVID and the effects of Brexit.
The governor of the Bank of England doesn't want to talk about it. There's become a kind of taboo around this whole subject.
We absolutely need an honest debate about the economic effects of Brexit. Once you had a government of whichever party willing to look at facts, then they could start saying, it looks as if Brexit has hurt us. It's making you poorer. This is what our evidence suggests. The evidence will say that, by the way. And then once you say that to the public and keep repeating it, you can start opening the debate.
Politically, the truth is neither party can be honest about Brexit. The Tory party doesn't want to be honest that the actual choice that Brexit presents is between being a rule taker, between subjugation like Norway, and self-harm, which is all the economic damage that comes from walling yourself off from your nearest and biggest market. And the Labour Party doesn't want to talk about Brexit because it reminds voters why they voted Tory. The Labour Party, as the Tories frame it, tried to block Brexit.
This is still a live rail in British politics. People don't want to go anywhere near Brexit. It's divided the country, it's divided communities, it's divided families. But in a way, that shields us from a debate which we should be having about how we can make Brexit function in a way which doesn't distort the economy. People who speak out...
No, I agree with that. I feel like rather than definitely avoiding the debate or avoiding the conversation at all, you have to talk about it, right? You have to talk about what the pros and the cons of Brexit and how Brexit has affected the economy. It's not something that you just continually avoid.
Function in a way which doesn't distort the economy. People who speak out against Brexit are often decried as Ramonas or Remainiacs. We're all being asked to accept something which in 2015 was only the official policy of the UK Independence Party. The Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, Greens, trade unions, the CBI, the whole of British political and civic society believed Britain was better off inside the European Union. And yet we are all being told we have to pay allegiance. This is a new national policy.
Wow.
I expected there to be a 1 year down the road recap of what went wrong and what was right and how we can fix it. But we haven't seen that. It would be really good to hear what other people's experiences have been. There might be some good news stories. I don't know. I haven't heard any.
I find it hard to think of anyone who said this has been brilliant for my business.
Some businesses will win as a result of Brexit. Businesses that can produce products for the UK market that are now too complicated or too difficult to import from the EU. That doesn't necessarily mean that the UK economy is winning.
EU-based companies that have gained some of our contracts, the EU freight companies that are gaining our freight business that isn't in the UK anymore, they're all doing quite well. The people in Poland that we've had to employ in warehouses rather than people in the UK, they're doing quite well.
I feel that.
In theory, the City of London...
From this video, what I'm hearing is that Brexit was more of a loss for the UK than a win. That's just what I'm hearing from this video. If you disagree, feel free to comment and let me know how you feel. But from this video, it seems like Brexit was more of a loss.
London is a place where the UK being able to make its own rules should be important. This is our sector that we're the best at, that we know the most about. We were responsible for a lot of rulemaking while we were within the EU. To date, we haven't seen the results of that. The predictions of doom for the City of London were always overdone. Big institutions in particular spent time, actually quite early on in the process, Brexit-proofing their operations so that they could operate legally whatever the outcome was. What we've seen since then, I think, is a slow drip where business and people get relocated to other places where it makes more sense for them to be. The city was the natural place to do financial business in Europe, and Brexit introduced a question mark into that.
We weren't given enough information, we weren't told what Brexit would actually look like. What do you want? Stop Brexit!
The losers will be some of the younger people who voted against Brexit. If you look at the age profile of people who voted for Leave, there's a vote amongst the older members of the population.
The younger generation will start to discuss this topic. They can't travel easily anymore. They need a nomad visa if they want to work in Europe. They can no longer invest in Europe easily. And with the geopolitical situation on a knife edge, it would be nice to be a part of a bigger group. And I feel sorry that we aren't for the next generation.
Don't want people who are not rich Remainers.
Will Britain leave the EU on time?
Sure.
You certainly hear Conservatives who say that if you can't demonstrate the benefits of Brexit by the next election, you're going to be in serious trouble. And so you have the creation of jobs like Brexit Opportunities Minister.
Leaving the European Union is the most fantastic opportunity for the United Kingdom.
The benefits of Brexit are always just around the corner. This happened 6 years ago. By now, somebody in government, given the fact this is a Brexiteer government, should have identified what the benefits are.
The Brexiteers haven't really formulated a cogent case as to why walling the UK off from its largest market on its doorstep will lead to a better economy. When the government unleashed its Brexit Opportunities document, what was the #1 item? That you were going to have a crown stamp back on your pint pot in the English pub.
Well, the Vote Leave side presented a very...
So I know this video was probably made a couple years ago. I'm not sure. But since then, I just want to know what the benefits are, because the way they're saying this, and I know there's two sides to every story, of course. This video seems like it's talking about all the downsides of Brexit and everything, all the bad things it's done to the UK economy and everything. If you can comment or talk to me, I want to know like any good sides of Brexit. Is there a video? Maybe you want to link to a video in the comment section. What are the benefits of Brexit? Because the way they make it seem is that there are none. That they really can't come up with any benefits that Brexit gave the UK. So y'all talk to me.
Very optimistic view of what the British economy would look like after Brexit, including a massive series of deregulation, Britain buccaneering around the world, striking trade deals around the world. There have been some trade deals, but they've mainly been with countries that Britain already had a trade deal with through the European Union. Australia really is the only one exception to that.
Signing a free trade agreement with New Zealand or Australia has ups and downs for the UK economy and is probably very, very marginally positive. But it's nothing like losing a free trade agreement and losing the frictionless trade you had with your biggest trading partner that's only 20 miles away across the channel.
We lose 4% of our GDP by Brexit. We gain 0.08% of the government's own estimate through this trade deal with Australia.
All the attempts to lay out exactly what a Brexit dividend looks like have thus far been totally unconvincing. And that's on the trade agreement front, on the regulatory front or the deregulatory front. The best case scenario is that a Brexit dividend is lots and lots of little changes that in aggregate add up to something meaningful. There's no sort of great idea that is out there at the moment.
When the Brexiters said, oh, Brexit will unleash Britain's global potential, that made me very annoyed because we weren't sitting on our laurels just easily selling into France. Everyone was already doing that. We were already trading with the whole of the rest of the world. Making things more difficult for us to sell into the EU did not make anything easier.
Stop Brexit! We have heard Project Fear again and again. On and on it goes. But that all the aspects of Project Fear so far have been wrong. We were promised a punishment budget. That never happened. We were promised an increase of unemployment by 800,000 by voting to leave. That did not happen.
The Remainers did themselves no service by claiming that immediately after a Brexit vote that Britain's economy would crash into recession and millions of people would be unemployed. I mean, that hasn't happened and probably was never going to happen.
The Project Fear tag was very effective from the Leave campaign and lasts to this day. I think the trouble is that Brexit's boring and detailed and wonky. It was hard to talk about that wonky detail around trading arrangements and customs unions and paperwork in a political campaign.
Get Brexit done. It was one of the most effective election slogans you've seen.
We didn't even start to dig into those questions until after the vote was finished.
Dang.
The type of Brexit we decided to pursue was economically the most harmful. There was always a spectrum of economic impact versus ability to make our own choices around things like regulation.
The European Union is not a...
Okay, so the UK was like tired of following like the European Union's rules. And so they were like, well, we're tired of like the regulations and things and such as that is what it seems. Like we want to do our own thing. We want to make our own choices. And so while I guess the UK economy took a bit of a hit, and there's people who believe that's because of COVID, people who believe that's because of Brexit, probably a little bit of both. But I guess you sacrifice that for the ability to make your own choices. Am I right in saying that?
A superpower in the way that the United States is a superpower, but it is a regulatory and trading superpower. Collectively, it's the world's largest market, and it harmonized all of its rules to allow everybody to trade more freely, and it forced other countries and trading blocs to follow EU rules in many ways.
We can no longer blame European rule makers for decisions and policies that we don't like or outcomes that we don't like in our own economy. With sovereignty comes a degree of ownership.
That's facts. That's facts.
I think we can conclude, one, that Brexit was an act of economic self-harm. Two, that the losers will be the nation as a whole, but also some of the poorest people, because ultimately we are poorer as a nation. That hurts more vulnerable people more. Third, I think something from economics we can say is that we can't run referendums on very simple economic slogans, and it's dangerous to try and weaponize economics.
Brexit is a slow puncture, it's not a car crash. So that doesn't mean that Brexit creates an unemployment crisis in the UK, but it may mean that over time, UK workers find themselves in less productive jobs, and that makes the economy smaller than it otherwise would have been. It makes wages lower than they otherwise would have been.
The slow puncture analogy has been right from 2016, but I think the mini-budget is that first sign that if we push things too far, not only are you going to begin to hear much more of an audible hiss, but you might even have a blowout.
It's bordering on disastrous. I don't think there's any real public awareness of this. Even if we go and visit my mum for a weekend and talk to her about the difficulties we face, she'll go, "Oh, really? I thought we had a deal."
Nothing's ever in the news about it. Nobody else seems to be voicing any concerns apart from maybe you on Twitter.
Brexit wasn't all about the economy. It was about stopping the free movement of people. It was about repatriating a sense of agency into the UK economy. The trouble was the Brexiteers and those who sold it were not honest about the trade-offs and the costs of that, which actually economically outweighed the benefits.
It is legitimate to have a discussion about national sovereignty and taking back control. You could have had that argument, but you have to accept that there will be some economic impact. The trouble was, you know, Boris Johnson famously adopted a cakeist approach, have your cake and eat it.
Cakeism, or cherry picking, as Michel Barnier used to call it. This idea that you could retain all the access you wanted to the EU single market and still be free to go off on what you might call your buccaneering Brexit. It was that cakeism that was slowly but surely exploded by the process of negotiating with the EU.
And we're still paying the price of that, really, because people have never been prepared to accept or identify the trade-offs and then start talking about what you can do about it.
Dang. I feel like I definitely learned a lot about Brexit through that. You guys agree or don't agree with the video? Y'all talk to me and let me know how you feel. That's all we got, though. You guys got a favorite video suggestion? You can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media and Patreon all up top. You can subscribe to Neal. Put all the links in the description. All you got to